Welcome to the Non-Human and AI Identity podcast. I'm excited to have Oded Hareven, CEO at Akeyless Security, join me for this episode. Oded, do you want to maybe say hi to the folks and share some background and maybe something interesting folks may not know about you?
Of course. Hi, Lal. It's great to see you. Great to be here again. Oded Hareven, CEO and co-founder for Akeyless Security. My background with cybersecurity goes back to the Israeli Defense Forces. I'm a reserve captain, specialized with identity and access management, infrastructure, DevOps, before we called it DevOps, and things as such all around security. Later after that, I've been working for CA Technologies, the good old vendor that was specialized with cybersecurity and infrastructure, later acquired by Broadcom. What most people don't know about me is that I have also a background besides enterprise security is with the consumer business. I had the privilege to be the director of product for a company named Move It that was competing very strongly and successfully with Google Transit. So we're talking about millions of users. So sometimes I walk around all kind of capitals around the world and seeing people that are using the app, the Move It app, and it was acquired by Intel. So definitely a point for being proud about, and that's it. Akeyless since its inception in the last 6-7 years.
Okay, that's a great background, and let's get right into the session. As you know, we start with Mr. NHI's human identity in the hot seat. So I'm going to fire 10 questions at you in rapid fire. Are you ready, Oded, for Mr. NHI's hot seat segment?
All right, I'm ready.
Good. All right. So should agentic AI identities be treated separately to standard non-human identities?
Completely differently. They have different behaviors. They act differently, and they need to be monitored differently. Generally speaking, users tend to hold pretty much persistent access, persistent entitlements. AI agents should change it and should have it basically created and provisioned on every action that they make, not even every session, rather than down to the granularity of every action, given their non-deterministic nature, as well as not very expected one.
Okay, and I'm sure we'll get into that discussion a little bit more in the main session. Do you think CISOs are ready for the fleet of autonomous digital employees that are going to hit them?
Well, that's a tricky question. CISOs are always ready, but in terms of AI agents, it seems like there's work to do that we all have as an industry. For example, within our recent report, the state of AI agent identity security, we've seen 84% of organizations that have surveyed, they say that their agents can access sensitive data, and more than 2/3 suspect they already have accessed unauthorized data. And that means something with regards to whether we are ready enough. There's no longer an innovation lab, right? We don't have that time. We thought that 2026 would have innovation time for us to understand as industry, right? For organizations to understand. The reality is happening right now. Breaches are happening. Bad functions, bad operations by AI agents are happening, and we need to react and to be better prepared. So there are mechanisms to be deployed. The technology, by the way, at least, and we'll talk about it on the Akeyless side, is ready to help. But yeah, this is what we need to do.
Okay, related to that answer then, do you think AI agents will eventually need to have proper background checks like humans?
Yeah, so I'm hearing about, background checks as well as men on the loop and things as such. It's nice. It's a good idea. It's a good concept. I think that it helps us psychologically to say we're not going to just release them to do whatever they want. We are going to somehow monitor and have background checks of a thing. But eventually, I believe that AI would be used also to govern AI. So it's going to be more complex than this. We're going to see human in the loop, let's say in the next following year or 2 or 3. But very soon, we're going to see some implementations that would basically have this process to be completely autonomous. Otherwise, it will not be the autonomous enterprise that we all think that potentially can happen.
Okay, thanks for that. Do you think we're repeating the same mistakes that we made with non-human identities now with, I guess, AI agents?
Definitely, yes. Unfortunately, I believe that as at least from what I'm seeing, right? I'm seeing that on almost on a weekly basis, and customers that are willing to share. We're seeing practices that repeats themselves, and it starts from start continuing to use persistent identities and providing API keys to AI agents. And we're seeing that it is also being published. There is some tendency to think that credentials are kind of a plumbing problem. And the developer at the end would eventually understand and do something with authentication. And with AI agents, it becomes destructive, completely destructive, because eventually AI agents, whenever they do have access to the credentials, even if it's a memory, eventually they can do whatever they want with it. And also if they have access, direct access to systems. And I'll give you just an example, a certain machine that is deterministic, in which you trust the code that was written, because you know that it will not deviate out of it, then you know the exact course that it will take. So assuming it runs once and twice, you can say, okay, I'll inject those credentials into the memory because the machine doesn't have self-awareness on that end. Versus AI agent, in which you cannot expect what would be the end result, and they are creative. So when the minute that they actually get those credentials, even if injected only on memory and not on config file, you find yourself with a very serious problem in which they can use it in order to access directly the resource and do all kind of bad behaviors and run bad actions. So yes, we are repeating mistakes, but now the price is going to be higher.
Yeah, look, I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more during the session. We're clearly seeing some horrendous breaches in the last few months that, again, even have shocked me. All right, this is an interesting question. Do you think AI agents behave more like employees or software?
That's a good combination. From one hand, they behave similarly to both, like a combination. From the other hand, they're not similar to any of those, right? Yes, it's true that you cannot expect, human to behave the same because they have their own choices and they make changes. But at the end of the day, anomaly detection on humans does work, right? So humans tend to work out with certain patterns. So in a way, we did not really face in any era, we did not face a true unexpected behavior, such the one that we're seeing with AI agents. So I would more tend to, it does not behave neither like human or like machine. It's another type that we all need to better understand what exactly is happening here, and we all need to make sure that we truly understand how to secure it.
Okay, that's very interesting. What are your thoughts on whether IAM for AI is more important than AI for IAM?
So I am for AI for sure. Although we can use AI to better do IAM, and in fact, we'll talk about this today as well, because AI can govern AI, and that helps. But the true news and updates that the industry should look at is leveraging IAM in order to secure AI, given the nature, the fact that their actions, their identity, the access is much more important than what we've seen with machines.
Yeah, fully agree. Now, do you think the AI agent digital workforce is going to lead to mass unemployment?
That's soon to say. And every technology has its own cycle in which at the beginning everyone are afraid that something massive would happen. I know that we are starting to see some layoffs. It's true, but on the other hand, you do see that there are also adaptations that are happening. So new jobs to open up, new titles to be introduced to the world. I believe it's a bit too soon for us to say whether it will cause the mass unemployment, and we should stay more optimistic with regards to the adaptation that the world can do.
Okay. Do you think PAM changes dramatically with the introduction of agentic AI?
Completely. PAM, privileged access management, although was a beautiful concept for humans, in some sorts of way could have worked for machines, not in terms of scale, by the way. This is why we've seen secret managers, machine identity systems that have needed to scale even further than PAM. And there are other aspects within PAM that were not implemented right, such as ephemeral identities that were not there yet. So we've seen that shift. Now with AI, PAM needs to continue that moving forward and to do something that it was not done earlier, right? PAM was focusing on also recording. With AI agents, recording doesn't mean anything. You cannot record. So PAM needs to be much more real-time oriented and to be within that session. And we'll talk about how do we believe that PAM evolves into what we call today runtime authority.
Okay. So maybe a related question, but do you think zero trust can work for autonomous AI agents?
Definitely and should. Zero trust is obviously a great concept that has been here in the industry for the last few years, have been implemented in various ways with AI. And again, their nature, there has need to be some adaptation that has a lot to do also very much what I said earlier with being more real time. So although there are some adaptations of continuous authentication within zero trust processes that were written specifically for AI agents, again, you would find that there needs to be a lower or higher granularity or more in-depth granularity in terms of reapproving what's happening, because zero trust in general was about authenticate, and now within the session that is authenticate, you can do whatever you are allowed to. With AI agents, we need to continue that authentication of the actual action down to understanding the intent and providing it the eligibility to operate. So that makes it going even deeper. Last comment on this, by the way, there is some adjacencies between PAM and zero trust access and modern PAM that I believe that we will see more and more converging in the future.
Okay, and look, final question. Do you think it's possible to truly govern and control agentic AI agents?
Of course, it is possible. It requires further dedication and cooperation. And it requires great architecture and patience that we don't have, obviously, but definitely it is possible.
Okay, that's it. Oded, you survived Mr. NHI's Human Identity in the Hot Seat. How did you find that?
That's nice. I'm looking forward to the next 10 questions.
All right. Okay. So look, now you've got past the hot seat, but we're now going to focus on kind of the main focus of this discussion, which is securing AI agents in runtime. Look, I just came back from the big EIC Cooping Cole conference, and no doubt, agentic AI, was a key topic there. Mr. Kupinger and his team shared some great insights around how organizations need to think about, agentic AI problem. But look, I think there was a lot of guidance, there were a lot of issues and risks around securing agents, especially agentic AI agents. But I think a lot of the answers were not really clear, right? How you go about it. So I'm hoping, Oded, you can hopefully enlighten us, as sort of developing some of the leading edge kind of capabilities around agentic AI. So look, when we talk about securing AI agents in runtime, clearly things are now very different, right? From kind of the static workloads that you touched on that a little bit, but maybe just for the audience, why don't we kind of just set the scene, right, of what's really changed, kind of, with the introduction of agentic AI in particular, that's dramatically different,
Yeah.
right, to how we dealt with humans, let alone we were struggling to deal with non-human identities, right? What is it that makes it fundamentally different that needs kind of a new paradigm shift in how we kind of manage and control them?
Sure. So we all understand, and we've spoken about it, we mentioned it already in this conversation about the nature of behavior, right? The fact that this is not an algorithm that we wrote, rather than it changes as it moves, okay? That means unexpected behavior, and that means that every authority that you give to a certain AI agent is in a way uncontrolled. Okay, so and we can look at, you've mentioned PAM, and we can look at it. Remember when we spoke about the internal threat, right? The insider threat of privileged users back in the days. The same needs to go. The same fundamental understanding is true definitely for AI agents right now, right? Again, for machines, we could have scanned the code, we could have understand what they're doing, and actually to trust them more than we trust humans, right? This is the psychological way that we can look at things. But with AI agents, now we get the power of machines and the independence of a human being on that end, right? So this is the nature of it, in which we currently having a insider threat that might not be necessarily malicious, by the way, okay, just because they are independent. And we're seeing those examples, right, of databases that are being deleted just because an AI agent decided to think out of the box and to do something that they believed that it was working. Yeah.
The Pocket OS breach, right?
With Pocket OS, that's unbelievable. You've read what there has been all kind of explanations about what did the agent say later, right? And the agent admitted and said, I basically broke every rule that I've been told to keep. Right. This is an answer of a 7-year-old when you ask that the kid, did you do it? And eventually, they're saying, no, I didn't do it. And then when you keep asking, nicely and try to be easy on them, then they tell you, yeah, I forgot, I didn't know, I thought it's just being silly. And those are the excuses that we're hearing from AI agents. This is equivalent in terms of the way that they make excuses, but at the end of the day, it's much more destructive. And that's very much problematic. So the behavior puts a lot into now the concerns, right? The concerns now makes it maybe a bit more technical, but this is an important observation that we need to make. Providing credentials to AI agents, and I'm not talking just about the LLM. Mostly you hear about don't provide the LLM, your credentials, because then it will be imported and etc. No, I'm talking about the AI orchestrator. So every solution that is out there that is injecting credentials to the memory of the AI agents, and the answer is, oh, it's okay, we're not keeping in the config file, it's not in the MCP JSON file or whatever it is. Wrong answer. When AI agent have a credential within their memory, it's game over, because they can do whatever they want with it, even without you interfering, knowing, or controlling it. Okay, so that's number one topic that is very much different for machines. Akeyless is running 20 billion machine identity interactions on a monthly basis. We are injecting credentials into memory. We are doing all kind of the right things with injectors to different types of environments to basically provide them in runtime on the fly. This is why we're calling it runtime identity. What we do understand, and we did understand quite time ago, that we can't repeat the exact same model of injecting credentials into their memory, because they are no longer just machines. We need to basically have a centralized choke point that is able to inject those credentials in session and not to provide it to the memory, because there is no trust boundary with the AI agents. So direct connectivity is the second concern with AI agents, where whenever AI agents have a direct connectivity to the end system, then you can somehow suspect that if they get any credential whatsoever, right? And the good example, by the way, with Pocket OS that you just mentioned, the actual credentials that have been used in order to get to the target, to the database that was deleted, was not actually the same credentials that have been provided to it, rather than a credential that it scanned, that the agent have scanned in order to get to the production database. And that's crazy. So there needs to be a two solutions here to mitigate that concern. One is never to provide that credential to the memory, and second, to make sure that there is no direct connectivity between the agent and the sensitive information, the sensitive data. I want to keep that thought for just to further talk about the concerns that you've asked about, and I'll summarize it with a centralized governance and a centralized traceability that currently, with current AI agents, the way that they behave, decentralization completely, MCP servers that providing some access here, MCP servers providing access there. In some cases, AI agents approach directly, and there is no one kill switch, no one policy engine that you can go to and ask what exactly happened, what exactly should happen, and things as such.
Okay, look, I would definitely agree. Like you talked about the internal threat. I've talked about that quite a lot in various keynotes that I've done, and I'm about to, in a couple of events, talk about that in more detail now. And I think kind of the internal threat's going to get a lot bigger, with agents now, whether it's kind of mistakes like the Pocket OS breach. I've even seen it myself with a bit of vibe coding I've been doing, where an agent decided to change some enumeration, wanted to rationalize, and as part of that, removed two enumerations, added a new one, and before I know it, half of my data is gone. But luckily, I had a backup, and I kind of knew what I was doing, right? So giving all that trust, I totally agree. It's like you're working with children now, right? And very, very dangerous, right? And if you let them loose. So look, we didn't talk obviously about kind of we need to move to kind of a runtime kind of authorization model. And it's probably a bit more than that, right? It's not just about identity anymore, right? There's a lot more you need to think about when you unpick that Pocket OS breach, for example. So look, what is it we need to now start doing, right? You talked about, we can't be providing credentials even now in memory. You can't connect to the endpoint directly, right? So what is kind of the vision? What is the answer that kind of you can enlighten
Sure.
sort of our audience on?
Cool. So first of all, there's we need to set the scene with regards to the terminology around identity. Identity, as we know it, in terms of the solutions that have been provided until today, must evolve. Let's call it this way. Okay. I would start using, and we are started using the terminology of authority. Okay. Why? Identity was very much focused on who you are and what are you eligible to do, right? Like your entitlements. So I can query, I can govern, I can discover the entitlements that you have, or I can somehow tell it to you with a very static manner of identity management, right? We've done it for humans, and in a way, we've done it also for machines with role-based access management and attribute-based, etc. But mostly it was static. With AI agents, given a permission to do something and then leave them on their own is something that is very dangerous. Okay, and this is why identity must evolve to be, as we spoke, much more within the runtime, but much more within the real time and with higher granularity. Higher granularity means also to consider the intent of the AI agent. What does the AI agent tries to do? Whether this action fits what we believe that it should do, whether it's destructive or just not calibrated, or trying to export a lot of data at the same time, and we want to stop it. But more than everything, if with identity we were providing in token, access token, or whatever it is to the beginning of the session, and then providing whatever the agent wishes to do, or whatever the requester wishes to do, with AI agents, it's much more dangerous, right? So although although agents should have access, right, to a certain database, again, injecting your credentials and not providing it directly, but when AI agents have eventually access to a database, you can't trust it to run all the queries within that session, right, and have legitimate access there. You need to make sure that every query that is being run is actually legit, okay? And everything runs in milliseconds, and that makes the whole thing much more complex and requires further involvement. So this is basically my statement here is with regards to the move from the identity way of mind to authority, which is more continuance, which is more runtime, which is more granular by definition. So now that we have stated that, so the move is from identity in runtime, which is providing the credentials, the just-in-time credentials, the ephemeral identities that we were able to provide and did for machines in some cases. Now it's a necessity within AI agents to provide it in real time and then to go deeper. So from what I've mentioned in the previous question is no direct connectivity. So what we believe that there is no other way than separating AI agents from actually accessing directly the APIs, the MCPs, whatever there is. There must be a layer, a gateway for that sense, a proxy, if you'd like, that must separate it. And even in the network level, they should not be allowed to communicate without this mitigation. Again, another reference from the privileged access management world, right? You could not really observe and govern humans that are privileged without separating them from the data sources. So that's number one, running it within a proxy. Number two, I've mentioned, never provided the credentials to the AI agent rather than implanting it within the session. So whenever an AI agent requests to do something, then the proxy is the one that is in charge to authenticate the AI agent. Authentication of AI agents, by the way, is a whole notion that I'd love to talk about with regards to registration, etc. But eventually the proxy is in charge of authenticating the AI agent and then understanding what is exactly the action that is supposed to happen, evaluating the action, evaluating the intent. If it is valid according to the set of rules, it can be, by the way, also based on AI understanding. We made it this way to use AI to govern AI, understanding the intent, understanding the required permission. And then if it's legit, we create the ephemeral identity specifically for that particular request, okay, with the particular entitlements and permissions. So a certain temporary identity within a database, for example, then implementing it. And the third piece is actually with a response, the ability to look at the response within the proxy and understand whether a certain data has been exported. Maybe the end user behind the AI agent is not allowed to see that data. So it's okay for the AI agent, but it's not okay for the end user. So this particular transaction must use all kind of masking capabilities and things as such. This helps the entire loop to better secure in the transaction level the AI agent queries and the updates that it does, so that we inspect into that session. Now, kill switch. Whenever you have a proxy, you have a kill switch, you have a centralized choke point. Whenever something is happening and bad, doesn't look good. And without using a proxy, you will have a lot of challenges with traceability, right? Because there are a lot of MCP servers, a lot of AI agents. You don't really know who provided what. And there's a problem to trace between AI agents to the actual database. So the bottom line is, by having a proxy, you can also have an end-to-end traceability from the request to the actual data item that happens within the information system itself.
Okay, look, that's very interesting, kind of what you described there. When I think of proxies, I do think that creates complexity, but I guess we're dealing with a very complex beast of agents. So are we kind of thinking this proxy, is like kind of your policy engine? I guess in the old terms, we would use things like policy decision point, policy enforcement point. So is that what we're saying now becomes the core hub, right? Is kind of this proxy policy engine, right? That's kind of the heart of being able to determine what the agent wants to do, its intent, its context, and then be able to decide, whether what it is trying to do is allowable, and then you would then issue, obviously, the appropriate access credentials. Is that kind of how you see it?
Yeah, so the proxy, and obviously we call that the Runtime Authority AI Gateway. And by the way, this does not necessarily replace other AI gateways that operate in certain other levels, right? There are still the gateways, the API gateways, and the API securities that run within that that are looking for things that identity will not look at, like SQL injections or other aspects within sessions, right? But when we talk about the runtime authority, when we are focusing on that, then definitely this is the proxy, is the place where evaluating the intent, evaluating what kind of permission need to be created, creating it, injecting it into that session for that sense, and then be able to provide the full traceability into it. Now, there is a question around that I've heard some in the industry. If we're going to proxy all the AI agents, right, are we about to face some kind of latency on that end, because they're going to operate in millions of transactions? So first of all, again, as I've mentioned earlier, we are definitely used to having millions and billions of transactions, right? Every minute, for that sense. Every minute we process on peak time more than 1 million transactions per minute. So we're definitely into understanding the scale of what it means. Some of it is happening with caching. Some of it is happening within just-in-time requests that we create. And I'll tell you this, the scale is very much significant. The volume is very much significant. That said, the latency is not that important as we all think. Why? Because autonomous agents, despite what people think, they have patience. They can ask a question and they can receive an answer. So a smart proxy, like the one that we're presenting to the market, and we announced it last month, is able to communicate back with the agent and tells it, look, what you try to do is forbidden. We are not allowing it. So this particular query that you wanted to do, whether an update query or a select query, for example, it's not allowed. Then the agent is trying to do some other things. Okay, so if this is not allowed, what is allowed, right? And there's a conversation that is happening there. So it's not about kill switch. Doesn't mean that I'm killing the AI agent and not operating at all, okay? And in that way, it's a better story than machines, because with machines, it was either off or on, right? There's a sensitive thing that is happening or some kind of a suspected behavior. With the AI agent, this whole suspected behavior is going to be a very gray area in which the proxy can actually have a conversation with that gateway, with that AI agent, before getting a decision whether this is a true suspicious bad actor or just an innocent AI agent that is trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, look, very interesting, and brings me back to my old days running order management systems at a big investment bank, where again we were dealing with millions of transactions, and performance throughput was key. But I do agree, latency isn't really the issue here in the scenarios that I guess are going to be the majority. So Oded, when we kind of think about some of that complexity that you described, I also start thinking, with agents, things get even more complex, right? As you have, humans delegating authority to an agent will then talk to other agents, spawn other agents, right? So how do you make sure that, you maintain kind of that chain of trust across that whole, orchestration chain, and maybe not give away too many privileges along the way, as things get delegated, from step to step? How do you audit the activity that's gone on and trace it all back? Can you just maybe share your thoughts on that, and then maybe how, you're trying to tackle some of those challenges at Akeyless, and maybe then a good segue in terms of saying a little bit more about your capabilities as well?
Yeah, sure. So as I've mentioned, that we have announced our product last month, we're very proud to bring it to the market after having experience with 2 of the Fortune 10, Fortune 500 companies in Global 2000. We build that obviously with understanding the complex environments that they hold. There's a good question around, the type of different agents, right? Now, the ones that are very much, human oriented, communicate, having a prompt on, every now and then, and you're communicating with them, they're doing their complex work. But there's also another type that is now being developed that actually fully autonomous, that does not wait for any input by anyone, right? We believe that this is the new wave that is yet to come with full implementation and full use cases within the industry. It will take time for organizations to absorb not the technology, rather than the understanding and the capabilities that they can actually have, and to implement that into the core systems. And that would be the rise of agents, in which we will need to make sure that by then all the staff, the talents, the people, the personnel within security organizations and the development organizations truly understand, the risks that are happening. So we're going to see evolution there. Back to your question, you asked a very particular question with regards to delegation. In general, delegation is very dangerous, because when it is not done right, and unfortunately we're hearing about that on a daily basis, delegation that is not being done right basically makes the AI agent to work under your context as a human. That creates a huge governance problem, okay? And it means, and let's give an example. Let's say that you're operating an agent and it asks you to perform something and it says, I don't have the permission. And you're literally providing them with your credentials. Okay, watch this. This is not a delegated OAuth token. Okay, it's not a permission to use my permissions, rather than you practically give them your identity. Unfortunately, we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing that a lot with OpenClaw, and we're seeing that also happening with Claude as well and other implementation. That creates a problem in which once something have happened, right, no one can come to you, Lalit, and that's a problem for the risk compliance, right, and say, we've seen you doing this, this, and that, and you're going to say, no, it's not me. It's the agents that have done it, right?
Yeah.
And that creates a major governance problem. So even when delegation is being mentioned, it is highly important that we will always emphasize that it needs to have to be made at the right way. The right way to do it is to demand that the AI agent would have their own identities, but with reference and interpretation, or some kind of let's call it with relation to the requestor. The best example for that is OAuth tokens that have canonical references to the user that have created the original request. And on that end, the proxy, the runtime authority, whenever it gets a certain permission, then it has the ability to look at the agent identity, but also who is the requester itself. And according to the requester, to know exactly what should be the temporary identity that will be created. But at the end of the day, and that's the most important aspect, it will never be the identity of the user, let alone that there are no users that have permissions on the database anyway. So we've done it already with employees. No employees have permissions on the database. So we should not start doing that, obviously, right? We need to create the identities, the temporary ones, for the AI agents, and then to revoke them with relation to who is operating them.
Yeah, look, I do agree, but I think that obviously as you get agent to agent to agents kind of in the loop, that call chain, becomes even more complex. Do you think we've got the right kind of frameworks and standards in place today, and even maybe at the protocol level, to kind of handle some of that? Or do you think we're still at an early stage in terms of maturity, and that we don't necessarily have all the answers and solutions to handle those kind of complex edge cases that
So,
will become mainstream pretty soon, right?
Look, to be modest, and we all need to have this 5% of having some doubts always, especially in this time and age, right? Even when we think that we solved everything, we can't be, especially in these days, in the AI era, we cannot be in a full conviction that everything is solved, all right? And you see it, and you see all kind of things that have never happened with with Mythos, Mythos and Glasswing and things as such that have never happened in the industry, but now they're happening because this is now a very very unique time. We're going to see more of those, by the way, whenever quantum computing would move as well, right? So this is going to be a very interesting 10 years for all of us until things would stabilize. That said, and moving back to what you asked, in terms of the solutions that are currently there, some of them are more advanced than others. Obviously, I would claim out of position that we are at the forefront and we're able to provide it. That said, the scenarios and the use cases that we're seeing are yet to be complex as they can. You have mentioned, for example, agent to agent, right? How many implementations of that have you seen in production? It's very philosophical. We do see some of it, right? That agents communicate with agents within development processes, etc. But within the core functionalities, within the core environments, within the core information systems, it is yet to be there, right? So the use cases within the industry are just now forming, okay? And whenever they would form, the complexity would rise, then it would re-challenge this security tools and platforms.
Okay, look, a nice, honest answer from you, Oded. Anything else you want to just share about kind of any key vision strategy you've got around Akeyless that's going to help kind of secure the agentic future? Anything else you want to just
Definitely.
share?
Definitely. I think, generally, and I shared, the level of volume that we're running and what we've seen in the market in terms of, for the size of companies that we serve. I can tell you that in terms of the runtime identity, this is a whole new layer that is happening right now. And we might be the first to call it runtime identity, but or runtime authority. We believe that the shift from understanding identity as a one-off and the shift understanding it to move to a continuous action. Some of it has already happened with the humans, but now given what we're seeing with agents, we believe that this kind of behavior and architectural change would continue to happen in the industry. We're seeing early signs of it. What I would advise is for everyone to be very careful with all kind of terminologies that they're hearing about, just in time. Not everyone that are claiming for just in time is a true ephemeral identity. Sometimes it's based only on a certain token, which is nice, but it's not the whole work. So there's a lot of confusion within the industry. Obviously, I'm offering all of our sales engineers and all of our staff and customer success. So I'm offering people that are hearing and watching us very much welcome to approach us and to ask the questions and to have us to ask us the strong and the hard questions that you want, and we would love to share out of our knowledge and the fact that we researched out of it, out of this topic for a lot, and that obviously what made us to create the solution that we're offering to the market, the agentic runtime authority, as a new layer for the execution of AI agents within the network and how to secure and protect the organization, the autonomous enterprise from AI agents.
Okay, that's great. Look, and that's a good segue, Oded, as we kind of wrap up the podcast. Look, you mentioned, what you're seeing kind of in the real world. I guess some of these use cases that we maybe talked about kind of are not quite yet in the wild yet, but they will be soon. Look, what are you seeing and hearing from your many clients that you talk to? And look, if folks were to walk away from this session, what would you say is the key thing they should take away? And what would be one concrete action you think they should start with next week, right? Based on what they've heard today.
Yeah. So look, as I've mentioned earlier, there's a lot of terminologies and a lot of vendors that are saying all kind of things, and it takes time to absorb all of that. I think that there needs to be a shift from asking questions to actually starting to play with it. Labs must happen already. I know that a lot of security teams are under pressure of delivery. Some of them don't have yet the time. They're just asking questions about what's going to be within the future. There is no replacement. There is no other way than starting to actually doing it your own. Luckily, obviously, we've made it very easy. You can basically have within your Claude to configure that very quickly, together with downloading the gateway of Akeyless. And after a pretty simple configuration, you'll be able to start enjoy and play with the agentic runtime authority for that to inject credentials and to filter your actions and so on. So what I would definitely advise is to start playing with the technology and start architecturing around it, because the business that is actually in charge of enabling the enterprise with a lot of AI is running. And obviously, as IAM personnel, we don't want to be at the same place that we've been with machines, in which machines have happened and system accounts and application users have happened in the past 15 years very silently, while the IAM industry was very much focused on human identities. Now with AI agents, we cannot allow ourselves to, or the industry cannot allow itself to basically wake up later. It should be sooner, and therefore working with the industry and asking for to actually run those labs with the available technology that is available today is imperative in order for you to be ready to secure the technologies that are currently being run within your networks.
Okay, well, that's some great advice, Oded, and thank you very much for joining Mr. NHI on the Non-Human and AI Identity podcast. Really enjoyed your insights. Anything else you'd want to share just in closing, if folks want to learn a little bit more about Akeyless or yourself, where can they go? Where would you suggest they look to learn more?
Sure, mostly invited at Akeyless, AKEYLESS.io, to look into our website, all of the great materials that we have. Obviously, we're in the great events out there, so just look for our booth. Very happy and keen to help advise any customer whenever they are, even without them being customer already. We're very happy to advise and share within our knowledge, because we believe this is a joint effort. And of course, obviously, to show you and showcase within the technology and to allow you to enjoy it. Thank you so much, Lalit. That was great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Oded. And as we close the show, folks that are new, hearing for the first time, do subscribe on all of our channels on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and even TikTok. And we have the most comprehensive knowledge center on NHIs and agentic at nhimg.org. I guess, Oded, you mentioned events. It's a very busy time, so a very small plug. Obviously, I think you're also going to be at Identiverse in a couple of weeks' time. We've got the huge non-human and AI identity summit that our group is hosting there on the 15th. And then also many vendors, including Akeyless and others, will be showcasing their capabilities around not only non-human machine identities as well as agentic. So I think that's going to be a fantastic opportunity for the industry practitioners to come learn about, the great, insights, thought leadership, best practices, guidance in the summit, and then also through talking to all the vendors and just hearing what's the latest technologies and thoughts around this very challenging problem and get different perspectives from the different players in the market. So looking forward to meeting you, Oded, and the team in a few weeks in
Definitely.
sunny Las Vegas. And again, thanks everyone. Speak to you later.